It's fun to live in a small community like this. And Mrs. Bunnelle did not want a lot of fanfare. She was a quiet philanthropist. She didn't want buildings named after her or anything like that. But she endeared herself to the community because of her cute personality, I think.
One of the cutest things she did was that every year when we had the Festival of Trees, she would get Mary Lou to call and say, and you know, Miss Bunnelle wants the animal shelter tree again this year. And she would call us every day during the festival. Is it still available? Is it still available? How much did somebody bid on it? But she was really determined to buy that tree every year, and she did.
I first met Mrs. Frances Bunnelle when a couple brought her out to Terre Haute for a visit. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to get out of her car, but we moved the car from building to building to show her the outside of them and to explain what went on in those buildings. A few months later, they brought Mrs. Bunnelle back, and she had a nice, crisp $20 bill for each kid. And they all marched up to her window, and she handed it to them. And, of course, we had prompted them to say thank you very much, and it was just a great occasion. And every year after that, Mrs. Bunnelle made sure that each of the boys had a crisp $20 bill. And it's interesting to note that when her foundation was introduced to the community, and I told that story to the crowd that was there, after that, a gentleman who was in attendance got in touch with me each and every Christmas to ask me how many kids we had so that he could continue Mrs. Bunnelle's tradition.
I was lucky enough to grow up at Waverly Plantation on the Waccamaw Bluff, 2 houses down from Frances Bunnelle. When I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I was in the Cub Scouts, and we had a fundraiser selling flavored popcorn. And so, of course, it was my job to go around to all the neighbors to try to sell some popcorn. And so we made our way down the long dirt road and up to Frances Bunnelle's house. My mom was with me, but she made sure that I was the one to knock on the door. I had to give the sales pitch. A caregiver answered the door and brought us inside, and I nervously gave her my sales pitch about the popcorn. And so she asked me, Marsh, what are your favorite flavors? What do you like? And so, of course, it was all sweet flavors, and she pulled out a crisp $100 bill. And she told me, I want you to buy as much as you can with this $100. And so I was so excited. A few weeks went by, the popcorn arrived, and so we made our way to Miss Bunnelle's house yet again, and we opened up a tin of popcorn, and we all sampled the flavor to make sure it was just right. And then she asked me to close up the tin to put it back in the box, and she said, Marsh, you get to keep all of these tins of popcorn. They're too sweet for me. And I was confused. I didn't understand, but Miss Bunnelle, what about the $100? She said, no, I want you to have that. I wanted to support your fundraiser, but I want you to keep all this popcorn, take it to school, give it to your friends, share it with your family. And so it really resonated with me at such a young age. I had never experienced that level of giving, that kindness and compassion.
I had the privilege of being Mrs. Bunnelle's hairdresser for several years, and that was such a blessing for me because she was such a dear and precious lady. Where she loved feeding the birds, and one of the things that always impressed me about her was the fact that she fed the squirrels too. Her and her golden retriever was always by her side when I was there, and she was just a blessing. She was one of the most generous people I have ever known in my life. I was going on a cruise, my first cruise, while I was in her employ, and it was amazing the check she gave me just to go and have a good time with it, because she wanted to make sure that I had a good time on that cruise, and she was just a precious, sweet lady, and I loved her dearly.
She had heard about a family that was really struggling, and they did not have any kind of plumbing in their house. So they were living at home, no indoor plumbing, and she took it upon herself not to contribute to some other charity to get it done. But as I understand it, the woman comes to the door one day when there's a knock on the door, and there's a plumber there, and he says, ma'am, I'm here to install your plumbing. And she tells him, she says, I can't afford any plumbing, and I didn't ask you to come out here. And he said, ma'am, says, you don't understand. It said it's been paid for. We're here to do it as long as you want us to do it. So she secretly funded that so this family that really needed it could get indoor plumbing.
So I came to know Mrs. Bunnelle through my association with the Paul's Island Natural Rescue Squad. We had a need for a brand new ambulance. When she found out about it, she actually went out and bought the ambulance, paid for the ambulance for us. That was probably well over $100,000 in a one-time donation. By doing it that way, we had the ability as a rescue squad to spec out the ambulance the way we needed it and the way we wanted it. And one of the things that we did is we put a window, almost like a picture window, on the side of that ambulance. Every now and then, Mary Lou would call us, and we would bring the ambulance over, and it was nice because we could put her on the stretcher and carry her out, so she didn't have to kind of walk out or any of that other stuff, and put her in the back, and we would take her down to the south end of Pawleys Island so she could look out the window. And she just enjoyed the company of the crew. Sometimes it was me, sometimes it was other folks. And she just was, like I said, just sweet and enjoyed it and appreciated it. And that's just how she was.
The second part of the story, though, is they had acquired other ambulances, I think, in the interim. And when she had her last illness and they called the ambulance, it's the one that she specifically bought that came out to pick her up to take her to the hospital. And it was just kind of fortuitous the way that worked out.
If I had to pick one word to describe Mrs. B, it would be grandma. She just reminded me of the grandma that everybody loves. Quiet, caring, always had great things to say, and just enjoyed your company.
I think the word that best describes Mrs. Bunnelle from my viewpoint would be sincere. She always spoke from the heart. There was nothing phony about her at all. She was just a very, very sincere woman.
I would use the word humble to describe Miss Bunnelle. She just, she didn't want any fanfare made about her. She didn't want it to ever be about her.
Prescient. She left us a 2-page letter that tells us what she was thinking and why she was thinking it. And every year at our first board meeting, we read that out loud. And every year, board members and staff members are so impressed with her ability to foresee the needs of the future. She realized that her contribution could make a difference in the community she had grown to love and care about.